Okay, so welcome everyone to the first What's New that we're doing on this brand new way of formatting everything. Instead of releasing this in a regular feed, we're going to be starting to do this more on YouTube. So we're getting a bit of the kinks out. We weren't able to start on time like we wanted to, but we're going to make this work. We're going to have a good time. This is Systematic Ecology. We are the Priests of the Geeks. I'm your host today, Christian Ashley. I'm joined by Pastor Will Rose. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
And all right, we are also joined by our second-time guest, Pablo. Pablo, would you like to introduce yourself for people who don't know you from last time?
Yeah. So we got cut short, but yeah, my name is Pablo, and yeah, that's I am. So child of God.
Perfect.
Pablo, where's home base for you? Where are you broadcasting from?
I'm in San Diego County, Vista, California, to be exact.
Nice. I'm way on the East Coast. You're on the West Coast. Christian's like in the middle, like in Kentucky somewhere. That's not necessarily the middle, but getting
closer
close
to the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got our first guests here viewing this. So hello, everyone. Nice to have you here. So we're trying to figure all this new stuff out. So sorry for any kinks along the way. We're going to get it done. We're going to get it done right because we have a very important topic to talk about today. And that is, of course, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Guys, this is probably going to be the main focus of our conversation the entire episode. And if we do eventually run out of ideas, I have something else to bring up. But for now, what are our initial thoughts?
Pablo, go first, buddy.
Oh man, what can I not say about this movie? Actually took the half of the family to go see it. My wife and my daughter went to see it. I had great expectations. I think it's a beautiful, well-made movie, and in a way that you can tell there was some big money put in behind it. The animation style, it transport you from one universe to the other, and you can tell you're in a different universe, by the artwork. And then the artwork means something related to the culture of where they're at and how they were transported. So it was an immersive movie where you're like, oh, I missed that. Oh, wait, what was that? So it was a lot of neck back and forth, but amazing movie, man. I was so happy that it was given the right honor that it deserved. We needed something different. Superhero movies are cookie cutters now. And this one, man, it was crazy. It was good.
Yeah, this is one of those blink it and you'll miss it kind of movies, and definitely something made to watch again, and that's always good with a movie. Well,
yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. It was, man, it checked all the boxes for me. I loved the plot. I loved the art. I loved what they did with the multiverse. I love the characters. I mean, for me, it had it all. I know in the middle towards, or maybe the third act, about like the 12th time they're flying through the city and there's so many things flying past me, I got a little disoriented. I was like, oh wow, we're gonna do this again. The fight scenes were really fast and quick, and try not to get dizzy. But all in all, like the entire movie was so good, and it was like you said, you blink, you miss it. I took my wife to see it, and she was, we went to a movie theater where you can order like a meal, and then they bring it to you, and then you can eat it while you're watching the movie. And there's a time when she was bending down, like fixing her salad, putting the dress on, and I was like, no, this is important. Why are you looking at your salad? You need to look at the screen. And she only looked down for like 10 seconds. Where I'm like, I think you just missed something. Like, please pay attention. I was trying not to like geek leader. Yeah. Like that thing of like, hey, you need to pay attention. No, it's like, just experience the movie. But all in all, we'll get into the plot and those kinds of things. But in terms of like, Paulo, you're right. Like noticing the details of the kind of art that they use for particular scenes and the particular characters to have in their own person. The art had its own personality in itself. And, it was just wonderful. And then the characters I really enjoy and care about. And I think that some of the movies and superhero movies that just kind of have their formula and throw out, we're just going to do a superhero movie and have some action and good CGI. It's like, well, if I don't care about the characters, then I'm not going to be invested in it. But I care about the characters from the last movie, but this carried on just from the get-go. I was like, I really care about what happens to them and their families. And so I was locked in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That you guys brought up the art and everything. Like they did that in the first movie to an extent, with Noir having, more of a black and white kind of, noir feel. And then you have Penny Parker having more of an anime inspired design. But like they went balls to the wall with this one with,
Yeah.
like Hobie's appearance. You've got
Okay.
Spider-Man India, like all the way that they played with how these different universes, what they would look like
Ben
design
Riley.
wise.
Ben
Oh, Ben
Riley.
Riley. Oh my gosh, yes. Our poor little edgelord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like, what do you guys want to focus on? There's a lot to talk about in this movie. Like, let's just have at it.
Man, where do we start? Where do we start?
You think?
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that captivated me was the plot of the story has the connotation of Spider-Man loses someone in every phase, and does that push Spider-Man? And I was trying to reflect on the biblical side of that, right? We all lose somebody at some point, and so what does that death means to us, and how God uses it? And I think that was a central focal point of him being an anomaly that wasn't supposed to happen, yet he has to lose somebody. So
Mm.
that's where I was trying to focus, um, because it's going to get resolved on Beyond the Spider Verse. Um, but there was that question where Miguel O'Hara was concentrated on, like, hey, this guy's an anomaly. We have to keep him away. The more he touches universes, the worse it gets. Yet, why does he have to lose his father? Like, it just so that's what I was enjoying, because that's what's going to be the premise for the third movie, which they ended it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot. How the room was divided. Like, oh man, what?
Yep.
But I think the way they ended it, it's not like there was no extra scenes at the end. It was just like, hey, he's returning on this movie. But yeah, I think talking about that premise, can help us also understand, when we lose somebody, what stance are we going to take on? It can either completely destroy us or fortify us. How can we how Spider-Man using that death? Because we saw them all. It was amazing how to see all the generations of Spider-Man that lost somebody, and how they shaped them to be the superhero, the one who is risking all of it to save. So it was one death over millions of deaths, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's the point that I meant. It got me. I was trying to think about it, and I still pondering about it.
Oh, yeah,
And
we
I'm
should
trying
also
to,
mention that we're talking huge spoilers, by the way. So
yeah.
if you have not seen the movie, like I can't do a not spoiler cast about this episode. We got to talk about everything. So Will,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. No, I think I don't know. Has the phrase canon event ever been used in other spaces? Like I'm
Uh,
trying to remember. I mean, we
there's
definitely talk about canon, but canon event in the
As
multiverse.
far as Marvel is concerned, not that I'm aware. I mean, you've got your Doctor Who kind of sense of a fixed point in time, and there was something mentioned. Where was it? Was it Loki? Where they had they had the sacred timeline, which obviously was
Yeah.
just there for Kang's benefit. But like there was another phrase they used. I can't get off the top of my head.
Yeah, I loved how they used canon event because we use, in Christian circles, the canon of scripture. And as Star Wars fans, we hear a story. Is that canon or not? Is that character canon? Is this video game canon? Is this comic book canon? The main canon is the main movies, comic books for Spider-Man. What is canon? What isn't? What's a what if story? What counts? What doesn't? And so to link the webs of the multiverse together by canon events, that's the common thread for every single version of Spider-Man or Peter Parker, I thought was absolutely brilliant. And so, yeah, and I think that's where the tensions on the line of this web is that you have Miles, who's like, we're here to save people, we're heroes, and then Miguel is like, kind of like, no, we need to allow these canon events happen so you don't destroy the whole web. And so that tension there, what is canon, what's not, are we there to save people or not, I think was just brilliant. And so that whole thread, because the multiverse can get complicated, it can get super convoluted. Even my wife was halfway through, was like, not just because she was eating her salad, but she follows these movies pretty good, but she didn't read the comics, and she was like, yeah, this movie is getting to be too much. I don't know what's going on. She's super smart, she follows everyone really well. but I get it. Like it could get really complicated fast. But I have those canon events that link everybody together, and bring them together. I think is pretty important. And then for us geeks to talk about what is canon, what is not, what links, I think is important too. And Pablo, as you said, like those sacrifice moments. What is, we're one bad day away from being a hero or a villain. How do we respond to that grief? How do we respond to that event? Are we gonna break bad and like Prowler at the end of the movie, because his dad died and didn't get bit? Or are we going to be a Spider-Man who says with great power comes great responsibility, and do all you can to care for people? So I think all those characters that were just flooded into this story, you cared for all of them because they had a Peter Parker story where they lost somebody, and they're wrestling with grief and whether to do the right thing and what to do with their power and how to be responsible with it. So I think all those things wrapped up, and plus was just the super action, the music, and the playlist. It was just excellent.
Well, that brings up a good point, though, is Miles is trying to defy this supposed fate in the movie to, save his dad. And, he's already lost his uncle figure, like, Peter lost Uncle Ben. But like, does it have to be a canon event, or is Miguel enforcing his own ideas on everyone else? Because there's a huge commonality between a lot of them. So naturally one would assume, oh, well, if it happened to me, it has to happen to you if it's happened to all these people. But is that true? Now, I think that's one of the things they're going to explore in the next film.
Yeah, and I'll say it caught me off guard that it was to be continued. I thought it was going to be self-contained, and I mean, I didn't. I try to stay away from spoilers on the internet, so I didn't dive too deep into it. So I was surprised at the end. It was getting pretty long. I'm like, man, how are they going to resolve this in like 10 minutes? But when they put the comic books on each page to kind of let you know what volume they're in with the cliffhangers, and to know that like the 5th issue of this comic book ended with that to be continued. I was like, it's right in line with the comic books if you're doing a comic book on the screen. But yeah, our theater that was filled with like little kids to older folks, like there was a couple like audible F-bombs dropped in the movie. I was like, whoa, there's kids around. I was like, hey, but it was like that was the audible response to be continued. They didn't want it to end. They wanted to see what was going to happen. So we have to wait till March of 2024. I immediately got on my phone. I was like, when is the next movie? And they're like, you don't have to wait a whole year. It's less than a year. March 2024, they'll have the next volume, which I think is it's Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, and the third one's going to be Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Pablo?
It was a Nexus event in Loki.
Thank you.
That's what they call them, Nexus events. So Nexus events are within the same timeline that destroy the same timeline. Canon events, I think, yeah, it gets complicated as you as you get through it. But yeah, it was yeah, man, I think there's a beauty behind it because there's a paradox that I saw that I observed because in order for Spot to be released, Miles was needed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that in itself is a canon event. So him um, going into the web, that other Earth form that they presented where Miguel O'Hara was the president, that needed to happen. So yeah. So to me, it's like, man, that's where I love that they're gonna explore this because there's always paradoxes in a lot of the movies that we see, like you said, like the Star Wars. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and there's some events that you're like, wow, you went there, huh? Like, yeah, you didn't need it to go there. We didn't know to, it was fine the way it is. Leave something to the imagination, and I think that's how God works, right? God doesn't tell you the whole plan. He's like, all right, cool, here's these little nuggets, and you can see, and based on my character, what's going to happen. So we get to live that out, and I think this movie's doing that for us, is allowing us to see what's going to happen. But I do believe that the event of Miles is not an anomaly, is a canon event that had to happen,
Yeah.
including the enemy. But by the way, the enemy was amazing.
Oh,
I've never been scared of a villain more than I've been scared of Spot, because of the
Yeah.
threat. And it's like, how I'm gonna destroy everything, It's like, wow, like not kill, destroy. Like that's you know.
And he started out so goofy,
Yes.
and then emerged by the end. He was like a Stranger Things monster ready to come after and destroy all of reality. So like the evolution of this, what they did with this villain from beginning to end was pretty remarkable. Because at the beginning, like he was funny, he was comic relief, he was no problem. Miles Morales is eating like a hot pocket while fighting him. But by the end, it's like, oh, he's going to destroy everything. And I think it also plays around with that kind of multiverse, or is it fate, or is there freedom? Is there both? Is there freedom to choose and alter the timeline? Are the choices that I make written in stone already and I have no choice in the matter whatsoever because it's just plan? Or do I have some free will that I can make a choice? And, when I moved to Chapel Hill, I had a choice to stay in Columbia or move to Chapel Hill. Was it fate that I was going to go to Chapel Hill? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Or is it like freedom to take a turn, and this is how the history was going to play out, and that kind of timeline. So I thinking about the multiverse, and maybe there is a Will out there in the multiverse who never grew up by the ocean, grew up in the mountains and grew up a snowboarder instead of a surfer. But there's still some canon events in terms of his family and the choices he makes and whether he's going to go to seminary or not. Those things, man, it just opened up that conversation when it comes to like the understanding or even philosophical reflection on the multiverse itself, if it is even there. But yeah, those are great questions. And I loved how this silly comic book movie that was like ADHD, like candy
Perfect
Sunday
Josh film.
as a Josh film, but still going into those deeper questions of family and friendship. So good.
Well, you bring up canon
question
events
I
in our
have.
own life. Like, no, go ahead, Pablo. We'll go my question after yours.
No. It's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah.
My question is really silly.
Okay.
Now I really want to know, though. Now I want to know. So I have to say
yeah, now I do too.
No. I was just looking for the Japan Spider-Man. I could not find him.
Oh, with
I forgot.
Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't know if I saw him in the background or not.
Right.
Yeah,
It
there was
might be one
supposed
of
to
those
be the
things they don't have
robot.
rights to.
Oh.
No, I heard it was going to be in there.
Oh, it is?
So
Well, I know, like,
maybe I
for
don't know.
sure, like the bombastic Bagman is in the movie, but they can't have the Fantastic Four logo on him
Yeah,
because Sony versus what Marvel has right now. So
yeah.
they may have been able to write around trademarks that way. But yeah, I did not notice Spider-Man either. But the question I was going to ask is, you Will and Pablo, we've all kind of brought up those canon events. Like, well, what are those in our own lives? Can you think? It doesn't have to be a single moment. It could be a couple. It doesn't have to be the most serious moment ever. But like a moment you can think of, like, if this didn't happen, I'm not where I am right now. And I can start if everyone needs time to think.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. That's a great question.
I've brought it up before, I'm fairly certain. But when I was in middle school, I was big into cryptozoology. And for those who don't know what that is, that's the study of hidden animals. You got your Loch Ness monsters, Nessies, Mothman, so on and so forth. It just really fascinated me. And my dad took me in South Carolina to a cryptozoology convention where I met Dr. Lauren Coleman, who was one of my heroes. He's written all these books on cryptozoology. He's gone into the field and research stuff. And he said, well, what do you like want to pursue in this area? Because he saw that I had like that. I wanted to do more. And I said, oh, I've always liked lake monsters and sea serpents more out of all the stuff, cryptozoology. He says, well, maybe you should become a marine biologist. I was like, oh, that's a thing. Yeah, I can do that. So as time went on, I applied to go to UNC Wilmington, not only because they had a marine biology program, but they also had a really good creative writing program, because later on I discovered my love of writing. But I never would have looked at Wilmington without that moment in time, which is where I met Joshua, which is how we became friends, which is why he invited me on here eventually all these years later. So without that happening, I'm not here right now.
Yeah. That's good. Is there a version of Christian that maybe went to a different university of creative writing, but still became a writer and or a different seminary because you're trying to figure that? I mean,
there's another one too.
Yeah.
I think I've shared this on the show too before, is that I felt the call to go to seminary when I was in high school. What if I had said yes then instead of 16 years later?
Yeah. I love the what if questions and alternate timelines. I do.
So how about you two?
Pablo, go for it. I'm still thinking.
I got too many. I just don't know how deep you want
Yeah.
to get into, how much time you got.
Go for it, man.
I mean, there's the moment of wrong choices and good choices that I have. I made some wrong choices that landed me in incarceration, and then in there, God showed me His love, and I could have said no. I said no for 30 something years, and that day I was like left no options. So I think that was my spider bite moment
Mm,
where, man, he dug deep. He definitely moves things. That was my first canon event because there was a road where I could make a choice to just say, "Hey, you're not real. You don't exist." And then I fully committed. You're real. You exist. Nothing's gonna prove otherwise. Um, I was an atheist, agnostic. I had all the yeah everything. I knew everything about. And then there's the event where I realize mentorship is vital in the life of a Christian brother and a Christian sister, of course. And so I made a choice in that moment to be held accountable and to be told. I gave permission to call me out wherever I was, whenever I was. I relinquished my cell phone to friends and family. That was a canon event there because I could have, it's easy to hide behind that screen, and those were moments. Again, that was another, like, my Mark II suit of a Christian, like saying, okay, um I'm willing. And it was tough, man, being held accountable, and people can be, they can be hard on you, but they
Mm.
do it because they love you. um and then the last canon event that I had in my life was deciding to do the same thing for others and stepping up forward and saying, I'm going to take you under my wing. I'm going to be responsible for you. Because it's easier to call somebody out. You can say, hey, you're doing wrong, whatever. But you have to do life with them. You have to spend time. It's training. I love when Peter Parker came to the defense of Miles Morales. Sort of he did, but he's also telling him, hey, you got to pay the consequences. You're like, you messed up here. Like, you shouldn't have been here. But yeah, hey, come on, don't be too hard on him. He was like Paul to Onesimus, like,
Mm.
here's a letter of recommendation. Dude, I trained this guy. He's good. Those were canon events in my life where, thanks to those moments, um, to make that right choice, man, my marriage got better. My relationship with my kids got better. I was able to be a better friend, a trustworthy friend. You can be a friend anytime, but I think a trustworthy, godly, accountable friend. That those are my three moments. I mean, from there I can expand, but yeah, I have those three events, three mark, and I still have more Mark 4, 5, 6 suits that got suiting up. He's always, you need this other technology in there. Now you need infrared, and now you can shoot rays through your hands. So it's, yeah, amen.
yeah, Spider-Man had his iron suit too. Like, there's
Yep.
there's some crossover. There's some crossover there. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I love this reflection on, like, what's the spider bite, and then what's the sacrifice or the moment of loss and grief that then pushes you to go deeper and reflect on what your superpowers or gifts really are, right?
Mm.
And so I like that reflection. So I think, I think of will and canon moments, like, regardless whether my setting is at the beach or in the mountains or on the farm or something like that. There's probably will moments, canon moments, where there were events like later of high school, early college, whether it was a heartbreak or some medical issues that pushed me to reflect deeper on life and faith and what I really wanted out of it and whether to take it seriously or not. And then the formation of friends and community together, whether it's at a church camp or whether with buddies in campus ministry or lifelong friends that you kind of bond together and feed off each other, and iron sharpens iron. And then what's next? So I think those canon events, regardless of my setting, India, Brooklyn, or the beach or the mountains or the Piedmont of North Carolina, there's these events that draw you to think deeper and reflect deeper, whether to take your faith or life seriously. And then it's those grief moments, sacrifice or loss of a loved one, that says, what is this about, and what am I going to do about this for others? And so that draws you to use, hopefully, your gifts in stewardship of gifts and your power with responsibility and on a whole different level. So I think of those events. I can pinpoint some times in my life where that played out. And that hopefully will always play out regardless. And of course, there's the canon events like, when I meet my wife, my kids, I would hope that, but who knows? Maybe there's other multiple timelines where Will didn't meet so-and-so and met someone else and had a different kind of family. Who knows what that looks like? But what's the common thread that makes Will and the choices he makes? I think is it's pretty important. So, man, good questions.
Good. Going on that whole idea of having canon events, well, who says that's true? I mean, at the end of the day, who makes Miguel more qualified than anyone else? Now, surely he went through an event where he really screwed things up immensely, and there's a lot of trauma coming from that. But I think that's a very human and prideful way of looking at things. Mm-hmm. Since we don't see time the way that God does, and we just assume like, oh, well, this happened, therefore it must happen also to other people, or it would have happened to me regardless of the situation. Or if I'd done this, things would have been different. And I think ultimately part of that may be some of us going, well, if I had done this differently, I would be better. And, I'm in ultimate control of my life anyways. And it's like, no, not quite how that works. I could tell how many times I've been brought to the point of brokenness because I'm a very stubborn, idiot, egotistical kind of person who needs to be backed into a corner before I say, okay, you're right, God. And I think that's part of what's happening to Miguel. Now, I can't say that for sure, but I think sometimes we look at canon events in the sense of trying to give a name to something and kind of messes with it. Go ahead, Will.
No, I wondered if there is somebody behind Miguel. Like, is he the one who's controlling that, or is there like a Madam Web that's behind it all that will be revealed in the next movie? There's someone behind all that, the canon events, or dictates. He's just kind of like the sheriff deputy, kind of in charge of doing this kind of thing. I'm curious if there is something behind him, or if he'll be converted, or if he'll just kind of perish holding on to his ideology. I'm curious because there's that rebellion going on, but even Jess Drew was kind of like, all right, watching and seeing Gwen Stacy be like, all right, I kind of see where you're going, where your heart's leading, and maybe that's a better choice and better path than what Miguel's been doing the whole time. So it's interesting her switching teams there at the end, or rallying around to go a different directions. If who's behind it all, and if there's like something set in stone, or if there's a different way of looking at it that hopefully they'll say. I mean, I trust the people who write this. I mean, man, in terms of how they handle these comic book characters and how they understand comics and art and storytelling, I trust they'll make a good choice in the next one. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays off. If there's a bigger baddie behind it all.
Oh yeah, but that also kind of gets me on the idea of we're wildly off my notes, but that's okay. You get that concept in time travel fiction and multiverse fiction of fixed points in time, like I said earlier with Doctor Who, or canon events for Spider-Man in this sense of like JFK has to die, or Hitler cannot be killed, he has to rise to power. Like what do we think about if such a multiverse exists? Do those things have to happen, or what's the point of a multiverse if things don't happen differently?
Yeah.
It's a very wide question. It could have been its own episode.
Yeah, it really could. But I'd love that trope. I love it. Like, I mean, I know some people get frustrated with it, but I love the mental gymnastics and exercises of thinking of what ifs and timelines and should it or should not. Like, I love that stuff. So those viewing at home, chime in the chat. What do you think? Let us know what you think. Do you have a question? What's your hot take? But yeah, I don't know. I guess there may be a time in my life when I thought that some things have to happen. Yep. I'm a little bit more like it has to be this, that, a little more black and white. I guess as I get older or whatever, I don't know if I just don't have enough energy or if I don't care as much, but I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm open to possibilities. I'm like, let's, yeah. Does it have to be that way? Maybe not. Let's go down a different timeline, see and explore. I'm more curious about what goes down a different different web to a different place. But yeah, I would hope that Hitler's not a canon event, that he has to rise to power. That I hope there's a timeline where the Holocaust doesn't happen. That we kind of nip that in the bud real fast. Hopefully in another version, but yeah, maybe there's other things like that too.
It's the whole thing with predestination. That's an argument within itself. It divides and it conquers, and it just it's some people can be on one side, other people can be on the other side of, God knows it all. So if he knows it all, he knows everything's going to happen. So there is a plan that is unraveling and certain things need to happen. And there's also the idea of free will. He loves us so much, he loves us, gives us free will. So it is a tough question, but we are asked to speak of those things and to debate those things for the progress of edification of one another, so that we're better equipped and not ill equipped. So pondering those questions isn't a wrong thing. Is forcing our opinion on one another is the
Yeah.
wrong thing,
Mhm.
because that's what Miguel O'Hara is doing. He's suffering from grief, and this is the way he's grieving. You saw that his earth was consumed by this event that he decided to be in, but we don't know. See, it seemed kind of rare the way it happened because it's never been explained that's how it happens. Usually the person starts to perish, as we saw in the first movie, when they were from another timeline and they didn't have the balance, just like also in Marvel. They used the bracelets to keep the GPS, what they call the DNA GPS or something like that, to keep them from aging. That was one of the funniest things I've seen on one of the movies, is when Bring Ant-Man is different. Then he smells like someone urinated on his suit. I thought that was hilarious. But anyways, that's just me, because he's like, was it old me or was it was it younger me? Was it baby me? Was it older me? Both
Yeah.
of them could have happened, or could have happened at the same time, which we'll get into another discussion about that. The urinated suit. Good episode. Hey, save it. It's all yours. Um, but yeah, that's one of the things that even, it's hard not to post our feelings and our experiences and automatically deduct. Like if I see you, I could say, "Hey, you're thirsty," and be like, "I'm not thirsty. I'm fine." But I see you as thirsty, so you should be thirsty because that's the way I look. That I'm thirsty. So whether that's a fixed point in life or a fix, it's just so. Yeah, it's such a good topic, because instead of us forcing the other person to respond to us, if we can sit there and analyze the situation, get to know the person, we can figure out, oh, okay, this guy is leaning, this guy needs some help. I don't know how Miguel O'Hara can explain him being there destroy the entire universe, or what it like. I don't know how much it was destroyed, right? It's and then he's a vampire. There's so much to it, that he is strong, that you're like, there's more, which is so amazing, because they left so much to the story, that we're wondering how this is going to evolve. And it's the same thing in our lives. We're a mystery within itself, that's unraveling in different ways. So when we look at somebody, we automatically deduct, oh yeah, this is what they have, and the person's like, no, not really, because I've
Yeah.
had that. You probably had that experience where someone tells you, "You okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm doing amazing." So why do you look like that? I'm like, I don't know. That's the way I look. What can I do? you know,
Right. Uh,
but
well, did
yeah,
either of you read the 2099 comic at all?
Yes.
I don't know if some of the backstory there of him actually being a vampire or not,
No.
but
That's more like an artistic choice.
okay.
From what I can tell, he's not a vampire in the comics, unless they're doing something completely different for the movie, which would be interesting.
Or like
But
Spider, they're all spiders, so
yeah,
they're
it's like a
becoming
spider
like
with fangs or something
a
like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
spider with
yeah,
things. Not
his
like
I call them
mutations
vampires.
affected him differently than everyone else because it was a different type of spider that
Yeah,
kind of bit him. So he's got, you can get those claws. He's got the talons, and he's a little more different than them. It's one way to kind of differentiate him that Peter David did when he created him, like to make him like he wanted to make Spider-Man, but he wanted to make someone who wasn't Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And Miguel is
I
very
know.
obviously not him.
I'm definitely going to go back and read it. I mean, they've lured me into that. Like that was kind of the gap of when I was collecting comics when they were coming out. I guess in the 90s, I wasn't collecting then, but I definitely want to go back and read. Now I'm curious about that particular character, and I missed the whole Clone Saga too with Ben Reilly's. But I know in the
You're better
Saga
off.
comic book, yeah, no, I'm better off. But the fact that they kind of made him kind of a tool and like perfect pose and the memory, like he was just such good comic relief. Quick question from you guys, like in terms of other than Miles Morales, is there or Gwen Stacy, because they're both like the main characters there, is there a character revolving around this particular movie that stood out for you that's your favorite, that you're like, I really loved that character?
I'll tell you the one that made me laugh first, and I'll get my actual answer in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get to Lego Spider-Man,
yes,
and that scene where Miguel says, "You're one of my best operatives" or something, I lost my ability to not laugh. It's like,
yeah,
there is no way they made that a line in this movie, that Lego Spider-Man was one of the best operatives that Miguel
yeah,
has.
yeah. That was the best. That was so good. And I guess how they got the rights to Lego, I mean, it looked like something right out of like a Lego movie.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
My actual answer would actually be Spider-Man India, and I'm not going to say his name out of respect because I will butcher the heck out of it. But I had read that comic before. I didn't really feel attached to him, but what they did with him in this movie to make him like, oh, he's very aware of his surroundings. He gets, Gwen and Miles have a thing for each other within like 5 seconds of meeting them. He's got the quips. So he hasn't had that real tragedy to a great extent outside of his Uncle Ben figure.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like a very early Spider-Man of like, okay, figuring things out. I'm cocky. But then later on, if we are establishing canon events, it's probably going to get a little, not darker, but more mature, like what Peter's gone through, Miles, so on and so forth. So I really appreciated what they did with Spider-Man India.
Nice. Pablo, what you got?
I think that for me, one of the coolest character was Spider-Man's baby.
That
She was like cute.
was
I
up
have
there
a
on my
daughter, and
list.
I was like,
I
yeah,
love Mayday.
yeah, there's this part where I think they're suiting up, and she puts down her little beanie.
Yes.
Um, there's that moment of a proud father and daughter when you're like, all right, honey, we got to get this done together. There's no way out, or you got to suit up. Man, that's my daughter. If I say, hey, honey, we got to get this done, she's like, all right, dad. Let's suit
Yeah.
up. I think that was one of the cutest characters. No words, just twice she shined, man. She pointed out the window and she's like, "Hey, look out, Dad! Someone's there." Like she was sense. She had her spider sense, you know. And then that part where she puts her hoodie, man, that was so cool, so cool. And then she pooped in a movie. That was hilarious. One of my best scenes is when he's like, "All right, she pooped her pants. I gotta go, guys." That's me. Like always. Like, all right, guys, my family needs me. You guys have a great day. I'm gone. Someone pooped the pants of my family. I gotta go.
Yeah.
I had a respect for that because um, nowadays, fathers are illustrated as these lazy guys. They're not want to take care of their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And here's Spider-Man taking his daughter to work. I take my daughter to the ministry with me. So that's why that part was really cool with me. When I saw it, I grabbed my daughter and I gave her a hug. I'm like, I love you, honey.
Yeah.
you know,
And it had like the Incredibles feel, kind of like the
Mm.
Incredibles and Baby Jack, like the whole thing of like the cute baby. It wasn't just cute for cute's sake, but it was powerful. Like I was never thought that like this baby's in danger because it has like spider powers and fly and going around. And one of my favorite characters is Spider Punk. Like he was so funny but good and cool and like, but also his little comments like I don't believe in comedy, or like looking at the baby and going such a nonconform, she's such an anarchist. I admire her, this baby who's doing what she wants. Like he was looking up to Mayday is like, yeah, that's what I loved his style and what he was doing and all that stuff. And then Jess Drew, like when she literally rolled into the scene on the motorcycle and the powers and her talking, it's while pregnant. I was like, oh my gosh, this and how they handled her strength, but also motherhood and mentorship and a part of the team. So well done. It was so good.
Wait, speaking of her, do you know what they're pseudo basing her off of outside of regular Jessica Drew, who obviously would be Caucasian in another reality, but this one is African American?
I think it's the same. Like Jessica Drew, definitely in the comics, as
N-
of
n-
recent, was pregnant and had a baby.
yes,
And
but
so there,
no. Do you know who she's based off of?
no.
That happened before Jessica Drew. When the Electric Company
Oh.
had crossovers with Spider-Man in the 70s. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember her name for the life of me, but one of the cast members was African American and she became Spider-Woman. So this is pseudo based off of that. I was like,
Okay.
that is such a pull.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're doing every version of Spider-Man and you got electric company like stuff going on, I remember that as a kid. Heck yeah. The voice for Lego Spider-Man was Nick Novicki, who's a little person who is a comedian. And so he has a good stand-up, and he's been some other comedy crossover podcasts I've heard on. So it's great to hear him be like the voice of Lego Spider-Man, that whole scene, even if it was just like 30 seconds. It's brilliant. Brilliant.
So we mentioned him earlier, but the Spot. How did we all feel about how he was portrayed? Like how we introduced to him? Like me, I was introduced to him in the 90s cartoon where
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of more like an anti-villain kind of sense, and he kind of redeems himself in the end. I've read the comics before where he first is introduced and later comic events. But man, did they boost him up for this film, and I love it because it's like that when you actually think about a hero's powers or a villain's powers and what they could do with them under a competent writer. This is where we get.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I loved it. Like I loved his evolution of being a goofball and a joke and not really worried about to the end being the one that like is going to tear everything down, and that that like his canon event is Spider-Man creating him. So like, oh yeah, the spider created you, well you created me. It's like, what? So our choices and what we do affect others even if we don't know about it. That even if we're not aware of some of the choices we make to other people, me even just going to the grocery store and making choices where I park is going to affect other people, and so whether I'm aware of it or not. So that whole storyline was great, and I thought it was great. Again, Jason Schwartzman, who's been in a bunch of movies and things, is the voice of Spy. I was like, I recognize that voice. and yeah, and nailed it. It was fantastic.
Pablo?
Yeah, I mean, I used to have his toy. No, no one had his toy. You know, Marvel never spent any money on that character. I think it was just on a couple comic books. I feel like someone dropped an eraser and they're like, "Oh well, that's him, Spot."
Yeah.
Uh, but the insignificance of the significance, it's crazy. Like you said, clear choices make clear answers, and the way he shaped it, like you can almost go back and be like, all right, Miles, take this one serious. It's like not everything's a joke. You have this responsibility,
Mhm.
and due to that jokeful way that he took things, it cost him to get angry and seek to be more powerful, to be noticed. And unfortunately, we create a lot of supervillains that way in the real world,
Yeah.
and others are just born that way, which is hard to explain as well. We can go back to Hitler, like yeah, we don't want another one, but we know how to deal with one. You know, like we hope to learn that way, and some have risen up to power. We're like, okay, we got to take this guy down. We know where it's gonna lead. But back to Spot, man, it was it was a goofy character that provided the right relief in the beginning. He does some things that they're just hilarious, like the bread coming out of his stomach. I think I was the only one laughing. um, it just to me it had so much meaning. Here's a loaf of bread. The guy's just standing there. He's trying to steal an ATM, and he's such an idiot that even by trying to steal it, he can't steal it. Like, he puts it to the ground. It comes out somewhere else. He touches something and he goes somewhere else. So he's completely without mentor, without. No, he's just doing life. Walking around making mistakes, and then he fights Miles Morales, and you can tell he's not fighting. He's just like trying to fight, but he doesn't fight. He's just so such a cool character. And then the consequences of that are shown at the end, and you're like, oh man, this guy's
Mm.
scary. Like I said earlier, his best line was like, "I'm gonna destroy everything you know."
Mm.
I think that's way worse than telling somebody I'm gonna kill everybody, because
Mm.
that means he's gonna hurt people really bad to a point that's going to bring them to their knees. And I mean, that could mean everybody. So while he's saving somebody, he's attacking somebody, and while he's attacking somebody, he could be all these things. So such a cool character, man. I'm waiting for the day they give him justice and they make a good action figure so I can purchase it.
Nice. Nice. It'd
Really
be
nice
cool if it
action
literally
figure.
had a hole that you could put your finger through and it comes out like somewhere else or something. Like they make it
Yeah,
real.
no, that would be the day,
That
right?
technology.
Technology. But
You're
even
right. I
even
think yeah, he had a learning curve too, right? He started out kind of goofy, but he learned along the way. Just like Spider-Man always has a learning curve of trying to figure out his powers and how they work and getting better. He had a learning curve too. And you're right, probably like he even says, I didn't think about it till you said it now. Like he even says in that little supermarket Zip Mart like gas station, he's like, why do you always have to have the joke? Why are you always joking? Like I'm just trying to like survive here. I needed to eat. I need some money. Like you ruined my life and I'm just trying to survive. And you're coming at me with jokes. And so, yeah, maybe, I mean, that's my default. I'm always joking around to cover up for things. So maybe I need to like pump the brakes on my Peter Parker, like banter in real life.
But yeah, that's a bit of a deconstruction of Spider-Man's MO, is that he's always wisecracking. And he's always trying to trip villains up, to make them mad, to make them make mistakes. And sometimes, I mean, as someone who's also very sarcastic, someone who loves to make a good joke, I have had to learn over time that I can't always do that around people because some people are more sensitive than others.
Yeah.
Like,
Amen.
yeah. And that's not their fault.
Right.
That they don't think I'm funny or they didn't understand the joke. That's not their fault.
I need to write that down. It's not their fault that they don't think I'm funny. I know to me,
That's a whole
I don't
sermon.
know. That's a good confession. Like, I need to say that every morning when I wake up. Will today, it's not their fault if they don't think you're funny. So good. But
Target on
Gwen
gauge.
Stacy did
I
the
think of my
same.
siblings.
Yeah,
Like,
Gwen Stacy did the same with like she was quipping at like the 16th century vulture, or
yes.
something. She was doing the same. Her banter is good. Her character, she's right in line in continuity with Peter Parker and banter and cool factor and quipping back and forth. But he was frustrated with that too. Like, why are you joking? And he was like, yep, it's there.
Yeah. Whenever this comes up, I always think of my siblings because my brother and my sister, they're like me in that, we're always making fun of each other. One will say one thing, one will try to one up the other, and it just keeps going. And like, for the most part, no one's feelings get hurt. But my other sister, she's not as quick witted when it comes to that. And she's more sensitive in some regards. So if I make a joke, and sometimes she'll have a comeback, but then I'll have one immediately right after, and she won't have enough time to think of something and she'll get upset. And I've had to learn that if I want to love her, I can't treat her the same way that I do other people. And I think that's one thing that Miles is trying to learn here in this film is that, yeah, we love when Spider-Man quips. I mean, whether Peter, Miles, Gwen, who have you, but there's another person on the side of that conversation.
Yeah.
On the episode that we were doing previously with, we had some technical difficulties. I had brought in the Romans 14:15, which speaks of the biggest division back then was, and it still is, vegans and meat eaters. And the application is that I was getting from that is God says, hey, if you're gonna sit with a vegan, that's okay. Don't eat meat. Like, it's okay. You don't have to eat meat. You also don't have to eat vegetables, You can sit there and just have a meal with them and let them have their opportunity. Let the strong brother receive the weaker brother. And then sometimes we think we're the strong brother, and it happens to be that the other side is the strong brother, and we're the weak brother. So I love this because even with entertainment, there's a big section of the Christian community that's like, why are you watching that movie? Or why are you being entertained by that? You shouldn't, you should only watch Angel Studios. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. Like, I see, I don't watch horror movies, but I don't offend people that do. I'm like, okay, that's the way you entertain, as long as it doesn't hinder your walk, fine. But I'm not gonna sit there and watch one with you. But cool. And this is one of those moments where we have to, tell our audience, hey, you can be entertained, but if it hinders your walk, you shouldn't,
Yeah.
if it causes you to sin, then don't. If it causes you to walk away from God, don't consume it. But there are things that we don't agree all the time, especially with comedy. Like I'm also a big guy that loves comedy, and I'm like always trying to throw in a joke, and but there's people they just won't take it. They get offended quite easily. We
No.
had like this weekend I was talking to one of my good friends. I was gonna lead into communion, and my friend was whining about it, and I said, "Perfect, you should pray for the wine." And then I went to the kitchen, I got some cheese, I sliced it, and I gave it to him. And he's like, "What do you mean? What's this cheese for?" I'm like, "For all the wine you're doing." So it's perfect for you. So he cracked up, like he was like so loud, but the person who was next to him was like, "That's so offensive." I'm like, "To who? To him or to me?" Because I thought it was hilarious. It's just like, no, to me, I'm like, well, then I'm so sorry. Like I apologize. Give me back the cheese. But it's just maybe I shouldn't have thrown that joke in front of people, but it was just it was funny at that moment, and he laughed, but the other person was not too fond of my slicing of the cheese and telling him he was whining too much, and then prayed for the wine. But yeah, it's just it's just a thin line, and we just have to have grace and mercy for one another. God gives it to us, so even on the other side, we should all try to carry a little bit in our pocket. I always tell my friends, put grace on your left pocket and put mercy on your right pocket, and then just go out and sprinkle it everywhere you go. We
Mhm.
all need it.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I know you have to leave in a little bit, so I'm gonna give you some time. Like anything else you want to talk about real quick before you have to head out?
No, I think just all in all, the movie itself is pretty remarkable, and what they've done with it, and the storytelling and the style. I mean, even before this movie, I saw the trailer to the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon movie that's coming out this summer, and it looked slightly like the art from this Across the Spider Verse. Like I was like, I like that trend. I like computer generated art and kind of how like do with Clone Wars and that kind of stuff. But man, if you can go back to like an art style where I see like a comic book come to life on the big screen, I'm there for it. And the plot itself was good too. It wasn't just great art. I loved the way it flowed. There are parts that were really, really busy, and I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna get a little seasick here if they keep doing this for another 30 minutes. But all in all, I cared about the characters. It led me down the road, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Didn't know if are you guys going to keep going here for a little bit, even if I pop off?
Probably. Do you have time to stay? If not, we can end right here. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got about another 5 minutes or so, but
Okay.
we can edit it anytime you want it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do 5 more minutes. I didn't know if you want to do recommendations or ratings and that kind of stuff too, Christian.
Yeah.
Or,
So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's rate the movie. The movie.
okay.
I'll give it, since the story is not completed yet, there's still a chance they can screw it up. So I will say a 9.5
Oh, okay.
because I'm very positive about this movie. I like it a lot better than the first one. And I
Hmm.
like the first one a lot.
Nice.
I'll give it a 9. According to some Reddit threads, they have the plot already written out, and there's some really good writers. Now we have some sort of a strike going on, so I don't know
Mm,
if there's some issues with that. But I think it's a good movie. I mean, 9.5. Go, even if we spoil it a little bit for you guys, I think it's still a good movie to go watch. It has amazing replay value.
mhm.
So it's something that when it gets to home, you're like, okay, pause, 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 pause. So yeah, to me, it's a good solid 9.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about everything at that.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. It's definitely rewatchable in terms of seeing the little Easter eggs and the Spider-Man and the who's in there, who's not, and the movement and the coloring and all that stuff. I give it a strong 9. I think I probably would have done it a little higher, but Christian like kind of shared with me there's still more to be told. But just on this, like I hope it doesn't dive bomb after this or ruin it. But no, a strong 9. The only reason I don't give it a 10 is because there were moments that did feel a little long, and then some of the action sequences were way too busy for me, and I was getting a little seasick. But I, all in all, like it's one of my favorite comic book movies that are out there, just animated movies in general. So strong 9 for me, and then the playlist, the music was fantastic, and yeah, we'll wait. I'm hoping that they already have it written and they just need to kind of like, I'm wondering, how's the strike going to affect this? You're right. Maybe, I don't know if they have it already filmed and in the bag. They just need to edit it and get ready for March, or if they still have to like write and create it. Hopefully they just kept going there for a while. So I don't know. How does this strike affect this and other things? That's a big question.
All right. So what did you guys think of the movie? Let us know below. Contact us. You can join us on Discord as well to talk about the film. Once again, this will end up on YouTube. So leave a comment, leave a like, help promote this video for us, help send it out to other people so they can see it. Thank you for doing this. Like I said, this is the first time we're trying something new with our YouTube content, with our What's New content. So let us know how it worked, what you liked, what you didn't like as well. With all that in mind. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot our call-off sign.
I do every time. We'll make up a new one every time, Christian, because I always forget what I did before.
Remember, we are all the chosen people, a geekdom of priests.